Have you ever stopped to wonder why a lone apple tree, forgotten in a wild hedgerow, is often laden with fruit, its branches groaning under the weight? It stands there, unkempt and a bit shaggy, yet it thrives. Then, you look at a meticulously pruned tree in a formal garden, its branches sculpted and shaped. All too often, that manicured tree produces a meager crop, seeming to struggle despite all our well-intentioned care. This isn't just a coincidence, it's a profound lesson from nature. The wild tree is part of a complex living system that we often fail to see, a bustling community working beneath the soil. It doesn't need our constant snipping and shaping. In fact, our desire to control and tidy up might just be the very thing holding our gardens back from their true abundant potential. The secret to the wild tree's success lies not in its branches, but deep within the earth at its feet. It has formed an ancient partnership, a silent pact with a vast underground network of life. This network, made up of billions of tiny fungal threads, acts like a superhighway for nutrients and water. It connects the tree to the wider world, bringing it everything it needs to flourish. The pruned tree, on the other hand, often sits in soil that has been disturbed, dug over, and treated with chemicals. Its connection to this vital web has been severed. We see a neat and tidy form above ground, but below, it is isolated and struggling, cut off from the very lifeblood that nature provides so freely. This contrast tells us something fundamental about gardening. We have been taught for generations that to get more from a plant, we must control it, tame it, and cut it back. We've been told that pruning invigorates a tree, encouraging it to produce more flowers and fruit. But what if this is a grand misunderstanding? What if our obsession with the secateurs and the pruning saw is based on a flawed premise? The evidence from the wild suggests that plants, when left to their own devices and supported by a healthy soil ecosystem, know exactly what they are doing. They don't need us to dictate their shape. They need us to foster the environment that allows them to thrive naturally. So, let us put down the shears for a moment, and instead, pick up a magnifying glass. Let's redirect our focus from the visible world of stems and leaves to the invisible universe beneath our feet. The real magic of a fruitful garden isn't achieved through cutting things away, but through adding and nurturing. It's a shift in perspective, from gardener as surgeon, to gardener as a custodian of the soil. By understanding and working with the intricate web of life in the earth, we can unlock a level of health and productivity in our plants that no amount of pruning could ever hope to achieve. This is the beginning of a journey into a different kind of gardening, one that is gentler, more observant, and ultimately, far more rewarding. To truly understand why that wild tree thrives, we need to delve into one of nature's most brilliant partnerships, the relationship between plants and mycorrhizal fungi. It sounds complicated, but it's wonderfully simple. Think of it as a marketplace happening right under your feet. Plants, through the magic of photosynthesis, take carbon dioxide from the air and turn it into sugary liquid carbon. They then send up to half of this sweet energy down to their roots. This isn't waste, it's a payment. They are offering this carbon feast to the fungi in the soil, inviting them to connect. The fungi, which cannot produce their own food, are only too happy to accept this offering. In return for this sugary carbon, the mycorrhizal fungi act as a vast extension of the plant's root system. A plant's own roots can only explore a tiny fraction of the soil around them, but the fungal network, made of incredibly fine threads called hyphae, can travel meters in every direction. These threads are far thinner than the finest root hair, allowing them to penetrate tiny soil pores that roots could never reach. They mine the soil for essential nutrients like phosphorus, nitrogen and zinc, as well as trace minerals. They also excel at drawing in water. The fungi then transport all these vital resources directly back to the plant's roots, delivering them right to the doorstep. This beautiful exchange system is the engine room of a healthy ecosystem. It's not just a one-to-one trade. The fungal network connects multiple plants together, even plants of different species. A mighty oak tree might share resources with a tiny wildflower growing in its shade, all through this shared fungal web. This creates a resilient and cooperative community, where the whole system is stronger than its individual parts. It's this underground economy, powered by carbon from the sun, that allows natural landscapes to flourish without any help from us. Our gardens have the potential to host this same vibrant community, but only if we create the right conditions for it. The myth that heavy pruning is essential for fruit production completely ignores this vital process. The traditional thinking is that by cutting back branches, you force the tree to put its energy into making fruit instead of leaves. But where does that energy truly come from? It comes from the sun, converted into carbon, which is then used to feed the fungal network that brings back the very nutrients needed to form that fruit. When we prune heavily, we reduce the number of leaves, the solar panels of the plant. This drastically cuts down the amount of carbon the plant can produce, effectively starving its fungal partners and weakening the entire system. When we take a pair of secateurs or a saw to a tree, our focus is entirely on the branches we can see. We are thinking about shape, about letting light in, or about encouraging new growth. What we don't see is the immediate and devastating impact our actions have below ground. As we discussed, a tree sends a huge portion of its carbon energy down to its roots to feed its fungal allies. This is a finely balanced system. The amount of foliage above ground directly supports the size and health of the root and fungal network below. When we suddenly remove a large branch, we are removing a significant part of the tree's engine for creating that carbon. The effect on the underground network is almost instantaneous. With its primary food source suddenly reduced, the tree can no longer afford to support its extensive fungal network. It's like a bustling city facing a sudden famine. The tree is forced to let parts of its fungal network die back. The delicate hyphae, which were busy mining for nutrients and water, begin to wither and decay. The tree effectively self-amputates its own extended root system to conserve energy, retreating from the vast soil network it once inhabited. This is a catastrophic event for the soil biology, a shockwave that disrupts the entire ecosystem. This dieback doesn't just harm the tree, it damages the very structure of the soil. Healthy soil is not just dirt, it is a living matrix held together by these fungal threads and the sticky substances they exude, called glomalin. This creates a wonderful crumbly texture full of air pockets and channels for water. When the fungi die, this structure collapses. The soil becomes compacted and dense, losing its ability to hold air and water. It becomes less of a sponge and more of a brick. This makes it even harder for the tree's remaining roots to function, creating a vicious cycle of decline. The tree becomes more susceptible to drought, nutrient deficiencies, and disease. So, while we stand back and admire our handiwork, pleased with the neat open shape of the prune tree, we are blind to the destruction we have caused. We have, with the best of intentions, sabotaged the very system the tree relies on for its long-term health and productivity. Over years of repeated, heavy pruning, the soil becomes progressively poorer and the fungal community is decimated. We then try to fix the resulting problems: poor fruiting, weak growth, pest attacks, with chemical fertilizers and sprays, further damaging the soil life and deepening our reliance on artificial interventions. The simple act of cutting a branch has profound and lasting consequences. The good news is that we can actively rebuild and nurture these vital fungal networks in our own gardens. It's actually a pretty straightforward process, whether you're starting a new raised bed or trying to revive the soil in an existing border. The key here is to introduce the right fungi, and then give them what they need to thrive. The first step is to get your hands on a good quality mycorrhizal inoculant. You'll want to look for products that contain a diverse range of endo and ectomycorrhizal fungi. These are usually sold as powders or granules, and honestly, they're pretty easy to find at good garden centers or online. You can really think of them as fungal starter kits for your soil. Now, the most critical rule when applying these inoculants is that the fungi must make direct contact with the plant's roots. These fungi can't move through the soil on their own to find a root. They need to be introduced personally. So, sprinkling the powder on the surface of the soil is, well, a complete waste of time and money. The fungi will be killed by UV light from the sun, or just fail to connect with a host. When planting anything new, whether it's a tiny seedling or a large tree, you want to dust the roots directly with the fungal powder. For a potted plant, you can gently tease out the roots and coat them before placing it in its new home. For established plants or existing beds, you can still introduce the fungi. A good method is to use a garden fork or a tool called a dibber to create several deep holes around the root zone of the plant. Just be careful not to cause too much damage. Then mix the inoculant powder with water to create a slurry, and pour this mixture down into the holes. This gets the fungi down to where the roots are, protects them from the sun, and gives them a chance to establish a connection. Once you've introduced your fungi, the most important thing you can do is protect them. That means no more digging or tilling the soil, since this shreds the delicate fungal network you're trying to build. Finally, you need to keep your new fungal partners well fed. Remember, they need carbon. The best way to provide this is to apply a top dressing of organic matter. A layer of good quality compost, or even better, woody mulch like fine wood chips, will slowly break down and provide a steady supply of carbon to the soil. This mulch also has the added benefit of protecting the soil from the sun, suppressing weeds, and retaining moisture. By inoculating at the root level and then protecting the soil with a no-dig, mulch-heavy approach, you're basically creating the perfect five-star hotel for fungi, and in return they'll work tirelessly to bring your garden to life. If we are to put away our pruning saws, how then do we manage the growth of our fruit trees to encourage a good harvest? The answer lies in a gentle and ancient technique known as limb bending. This method works with the tree's natural tendencies rather than against them. A tree's hormones, called auxins, dictate its growth. These hormones flow upwards, promoting strong vertical growth at the expense of fruit production. That's why you often see lots of leafy, upright shoots, these are called water sprouts, on a vigorous tree. These vertical branches are programmed for vegetative growth, not for bearing fruit. Limb bending cleverly redirects this hormonal flow. By gently pulling a young, flexible branch down from a vertical or steep-angled position to one that's closer to horizontal, we change the hormonal balance within that branch. The flow of upward driving auxins is slowed, and the branch is tricked into thinking it's older and more mature than it is. This signals the branch to switch from vegetative growth mode to fruiting mode. Instead of putting its energy into reaching for the sky, it begins to develop fruit buds for the following season. You are not removing the tree's solar panels. You're simply telling them to do a different job. The process is remarkably simple and, honestly, it's best done in early summer when the branches are at their most pliable. Select a young, upright shoot that you want to encourage to fruit. Gently, very gently, bend it downwards. You'll feel the tension in the wood. The ideal angle is somewhere between 60 and 90 degrees from the main trunk. Horizontal or just below is perfect. Be careful not to force it, as a branch can snap. Once you've got it in position, you need to tie it down. Use a soft, flexible material like jute twine or strips of old fabric to avoid cutting into the bark. You can tie the branch to a lower, stronger branch, or even to a stake pushed into the ground. After a few months, the branch will have set in its new position, and the ties can often be removed. The following year, you'll find that this bent limb is covered in fruit spurs and blossom, while the untouched vertical branches remain leafy and bare. This technique allows you to shape the tree and promote immense fruitfulness without ever having to make a damaging cut. You preserve the entire leaf canopy, ensuring the tree can produce maximum carbon to feed its vital fungal network. It's a perfect example of working in harmony with the plant, using a deep understanding of how it grows to achieve our goals without causing harm. We have been led down a garden path for too long, convinced that control is the key to success. The cycle of pruning, fertilizing and spraying is really just a treadmill of intervention. We cut the tree, which damages its ability to feed itself through the fungal web. The tree weakens and becomes unproductive, so we apply chemical fertilizers. These salts further harm the delicate soil life, making the tree even more dependent on our help. It's a failing system that creates weak plants and dead soil. It treats the garden not as a living ecosystem, but as an inert production line that requires constant chemical inputs and mechanical interference to function. The quiet revolution in gardening is about stepping off this treadmill. It's about recognizing that the most powerful tools we have are not in the garden shed, but are already present in the soil, in the air, and in the plants themselves. By fostering the mycorrhizal network, we're not just feeding our plants, we're rebuilding a living soil. A soil rich in fungi is a soil that can manage its own fertility, retain water more effectively, and resist disease. The plants growing in it are not just surviving, they're thriving as part of a connected, resilient community that we have helped to restore. This approach asks for a change in our mindset. We must learn to see ourselves less as managers and more as facilitators. Our job is to create the conditions for life to flourish. This means protecting the soil from disturbance, covering it with organic mulches, and using techniques like limb bending that work with a plant's nature. It means choosing to introduce and nurture beneficial fungi instead of reaching for a bottle of liquid feed. It requires patience and observation, a willingness to watch, learn, and respond to what the garden is telling us, rather than imposing our will upon it. The rewards for this shift are, honestly, immeasurable. You'll find that your garden becomes more self-sufficient year after year. The soil will grow darker and richer, teeming with life. Your plants will be healthier, more resilient to pests and drought, and the harvest will be more abundant and nutritious than anything you could achieve with chemicals and shears. This isn't a newfangled idea, it's a return to the oldest wisdom of all. Nature has been gardening this way for millions of years. It's time we put down our tools, stop trying to conquer it, and simply learn to work with its profound and beautiful systems.